Hi, my name is Anthony Alvarez, and this is my final project titled Marvel's Avengers Endgame Review Analysis. So we'll start with business and data understanding. Our business question is that our studio created a cinematic universe that's looking to conclude a major storyline. So we're going to piggyback off of Avengers Endgame and how they concluded Phase 3 with Endgame and Spider-Man. Endgame's the second highest earning movie ever, and it's the highest earning in the last decade. And many know that it's not the best ever made, but it's good enough to the point where people will go back to see it multiple times. We aim to identify themes and trends amongst critics with Rotten Tomatoes and the general population with Twitter to replicate the blockbuster Marvel formula for a non-Disney studio. So our action plan, we'll start with bringing in data. Then we'll go into descriptive analytic techniques with Rotten Tomatoes and Twitter, then on to content analytic techniques with Rotten Tomatoes and Twitter, and then network analytics with just Twitter, and then storytelling, and bring our recommendations in at the end. So Rotten Tomatoes and data identification and collection. So we come into here and we find that we have 540 reviews. So data cleaning and text pre-processing. We'll start with Rotten Tomatoes, and this is what our clean data looks like. Then we'll go into Twitter, and this is our clean data from Twitter. There's 540 reviews for Rotten Tomatoes and 545 for Twitter. We'll jump into descriptive analytics. We'll start with Rotten Tomatoes. There's 506 fresh reviews and 34 rotten. April is clearly the highest since it was released in April. That's actually a sticking point that we'll get back to at the end. And then in the diagram, Avenger Endgame is obviously the first, but 3 Hours the second, which was a huge talking point when they first revealed that. Here is a word cloud. So 93% of the time, the movie receives a fresh review from a critic. April, Endgame, Avenger movie, and Feel are all in the top 5. And the reviewers did mention fan service, which means there's a little bit of pandering involved. Now we'll get into Twitter. With the tweet metrics, there's 545 tweets, 21 are hashtags, 115 are original, and then 430 are retweets. So we'll get into the time series, and the fastest pace per minute was 57 tweets per minute over the time period that was recorded. Get into user metrics with 509 unique users, with Josh Brotto at the top, and then user locations and visibility. The geocode, there's 230 that are using geocode, and the most visible users are Josh Brotto again. URL metrics, these are the top 10 URLs, and I'm not sure how to say that, emojis, has the most followers with 76,332. And you can clearly see here. Here's all of what we found. The top 5 Twitter followings had over 17,500 followers. Content analytics. So we'll start with Rotten Tomatoes. And this is where we create review and label in our data frame. And then we create a dictionary of over 2,000 words. And then we'll go to the building of the models. This is where we decide to go with 6 different topics. And number 5 is clearly the highest with 134. And then we'll use this in Gensim. And then we'll jump into the topic model, or we'll bring in new data for the topic model. So we decided on 6 topics, and the new data introduction of the 5 new ones brought in, 4 of those were topic 5 and the other one was topic 2. And we'll go to business intelligence. So 5 and 1 both take up over 20% of the data. And you can clearly see that here. 296 is the one that is closest to 5. And the highest probability is actually 1. And then, like I said, topic 5's most representative document is 296. Now into Twitter. We'll start with the cluster document level word frequency analysis. The most popular word, obviously Endgame Avengers is a close second. And you can see it here. And you see 2 years ago, of course, that has to do with the release. I'll get into the hashtag analysis. There weren't many hashtags, but towards the end, you'll see that it does still paint the picture that we needed to. And we'll get into Twitter sentiment analysis. So there were 99 positive, 43 negative, and 403 neutral. So a lot of these tweets were just probably just somewhat celebratory, but not with a lot of emphasis on that, and just kind of remembering the movie itself. Here are the most negative ones. 305 is up there, and then 530, 187, 304, 22. Then 322 is clearly the highest with 81% roughly. And then this is the skew. It skews slightly more positive, but you can see a lot of it is very neutral. Zoom out here. Like I said, the hashtags, there weren't many, but in Avengers Endgame and Robert Downey Jr., naming one of the stars is going to be another sticking point for the findings. I'll get into network analytics. So here's the mention network. We can zoom in here. You can see Marvel HD gets Brandon Davis, Hiddles BB, and then Rogers Romanova, I believe is how you pronounce that, are the top ones. And if we look at the actual network and node level, you can see that the Rogers Romanova is back there quite a bit. And then the co-hashtag network, this is where we are going to see everything, or this is where we see all of the hashtags with the average degree of 5.167, graph density 0.47. Clearly, Endgame and Avengers Endgames are the big ones, with Avengers Endgame having a degree of 11. So the findings, what we've been through, Marvel HD gifts, Brandon Davis BD, Rogers Manova, and Hiddles BB are all obviously the biggest mention networks. And then the top hashtags, so Avengers Endgame is the top one, and then Robert Downey Jr. is the top one for people. And Lights Camera Pod. So if you saw back in the negative reviews, there were actually a lot. So Lights Camera Pod was a mid-tier for the mention network, but it had a lot of negative tweets. So here's the storytelling and the conclusion. And we'll revisit our business question here. We're looking for themes and trends amongst the critics and the general population to replicate the formula. So here's the storytelling. We gathered over 1,000 different viewpoints for insight for our capstone blockbuster. The purpose was to take into account every type of viewer and the sentiment and their experiences, not numeric data. So we wanted the sentiment, not the numbers here. So if we release the movie in mid to late spring, like April, we'll avoid a lot of other blockbusters, and we'll avoid a lot of the Oscar pushes late in the year. Since we would be releasing a superhero movie, it would most likely not be contending for Best Picture or Best Actor. Consideration of the quality lends to the fact that most of the tweets are neutral or positive, but neglecting the quality and star power would be fatal. The finale of this storyline should take into account for directors with long track records. The Russo brothers are in the top 10 in the Bigram and are heavily mentioned in topic 0. Star actors that are necessary, such as Robert Downey Jr., we saw his name everywhere. In the data, he has the second most hashtags. And then lastly, the advertising should focus on people with a large mention network. Obviously, Marvel HD Gifts is for Marvel, but we should create one for ourselves. And then easily replicable hashtags like Avengers Endgame or MCU should be thrown in there. So here is our managerial recommendations. Should implement topic 5. So we should lean towards something that has this sort of breakdown, or try and tweet about that in that sort of breakdown. Focusing on our content and everything in the back end will pay off in the long term. Uh, it, if you saw for the 296 for topic 5, that was the closest to it. This is a snippet of it. It gives us a collection of compelling characters and ties up a lot of loose ends. So that would be something that would to focus on, not to let any characters fall through the cracks, and to make sure that the loose ends are tied up. Capitalize on the directors. The Russo brothers directed multiple Marvel movies before Endgame, so they knew what was building. And then push actors towards social media engagements. Tom Holland, RDJ, and Mark Ruffalo are all included in hashtag networks. And then use the tweeters with the largest followings to help promote on social media, and use large mention networks as well. So Hiddles BB is the third largest tweeter and has the fourth largest mention network. So someone like that would be the perfect target for our movie to help promote. That is all. Thank you.